Hello.
Hello.
Why, hello.
Welcome to another episode of Mondays with Meg
and Thom.
We're back.
One last time here in February.
With questions. Today's question is cool because it comes from a high school student, which is cool. I think it's neat that they asked the question. All right, our question is, how do you respond to others making rude or mocking remarks about Christians or Christianity without being overly assertive? It's interesting to me. No, because when I say it out loud, it sounds silly. But it's like for me to be like, does that still happen? I know it happens on like social media and like comment sections and things like that. But does it happen in person still?
It makes me think back when I was a teenager. I mean, the big thing back then was all the it was the era of the televangelists, and I was a teenager in Charlotte, and down the road was Jim and Tammy's Christian amusement park.
What?
Place. So you don't even remember?
No.
This is before your time. So everything, in my teenage mind, all Christians were televangelists. It was the worst kind of thing. And they were obviously out for money, and it was
right.
It was just terrible. It was just terrible, and you couldn't understand why people believed this stuff. And I think today, with today's teenagers, Christianity that gets presented again is really awful stuff. I mean, it's really kind of easy to. It's not like they're making things up, or it's this sort of prejudiced kind of view where you're hanging on to some old stereotype or whatever.
Right. Well, because it's not old. It didn't go anywhere. Like it's, Well, I think it's interesting because I like, was Charlotte considered / the Bible Belt?
We are Bible Belt, North Carolina. We are it. We're in it still. I mean, we're not. I think we're.
No, because I felt like I grew up in the thick of it.
Yeah.
Like in Hickory. Like I felt like that was.
Oh, I think the whole region is. The whole region is.
But I think like religious culture shock to go from Miami.
Yeah.
To be transplanted into the Bible Belt at 9 years old and being like, this is how I make friends.
Yeah, there's a whole different culture and such.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, what's hard is with a question like this, I think from, where I am today is sometimes my response, if somebody were saying some sort of snide remark about Christianity, is, you're right. I might tend to agree with what they're saying, but I think that kind of hits back to one of our other videos. I think it's important to say,
hey man,
you're right. This stuff is awful.
I see this.
And, you either continue down that path, or to me it's always an opportunity of like
a discussion
or something. I mean, sometimes it's just people being
ugly
jerks, just being ugly, and when that's the case, then you just let their ugliness present itself. But sometimes if there is something there, it is an opportunity to kind of say, yeah, that's no good.
Right.
This is
it's like
this is bad, or you become a parody of that. Some people double down.
The double down.
And then you're beginning to move to being a parody of something.
Right.
I think that's why authenticity is so important. It's so easy just to kind of put on the Christian
Happy
culture,
Right.
whatever that dominant
gosh.
Christian culture of your era or place may be, and just kind of go along with it, which unfortunately I think a lot of folks do.
Well, I think that's
But I think that's also what's helped Christianity get to the point where it is again, where it's just sort of like it devolved into some of the foolishness that we see. There's just so much foolishness out there right now with what we would call popular Christianity.
right.
I don't even have to use the E word.
It's like the E word, but I know we don't
The
have to
E
talk
word.
about it. Yeah. Popular Christianity.
Which goes into
Cult Christianity.
yeah.
Because that's, I think, what it has turned into.
Well, but that's always elements of that. I mean, even
Right.
back.
There's always been that element.
Right. Even when I was, again, just to use personal experiences, even with the televangelist cult culture
Right.
exposed a lot of that stuff.
Mhm.
And either people, and again, you couldn't understand, but I mean, people bought into that.
Right.
And they were wholehearted. I mean, that was it. And, if you were outside of that little cult bubble, you were like,
Oh, but then you were outside.
what's
like,
wrong with you?
Right. Like,
you
why
are,
aren't
you're
you?
just insane.
Right.
But in my teenage brain, which is often, teenage brain's a little more black and white and everything's the same and tends to do that kind of thinking.
It's more lizard brain and not wizard brain.
Then everybody was like that. So it was like all Christians are this way.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
And it took me some years of maturing and learning to finally find my place. I mean, I've talked about that before with you about,
Well, and it's like when you recognize that, like, I think there's a lot of freedom in recognizing, oh, we're not all like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're not all
loony
spouty and yeah. Well, I think there's freedom. It's like when you realize that we're not all that way.
The word parody just is in my head a lot for this conversation, because I think eventually people just become a parody of themselves. It doesn't matter if you're one way. I mean, I can say the same thing about liberal Christianity. There's many of our colleagues and folks right now that we're working with within our own Presbyterian church, and they've become a parody. So you almost know what they're gonna say before they say it.
Right.
They're the ones who are gonna.
Well, it's well rehearsed. Like, it's like
right.
It's the opposite of what you're hearing from the cult Christianity.
It's just a different
Which is
cult.
just right. Well, that's the thing. It's like, well, it's so far over here that it's another cult.
Right. But we just tend to seem to go that way naturally, which is why
Into cults or
where we kind of find something, and then what we do is we just kind of adopt the sort of culture of, let's stay with high school.
okay.
So, when I was a kid, again, many, many years ago,
Many moons.
it's Ferris Bueller was the thing. And one of the things that they'd like to show in those movies was, in high school, you're part of different cliques and types. And
that didn't go away.
It doesn't go. But the funniest thing is, then you talk to high schoolers and they're like, I'm my own person. And you're like, no, because you're just like the person next to you.
Right.
The same thing happens, I think, a lot with Christianity. And this is why I wanted to bring up to you Nadia Bowles-Weber, who I think she's great.
Right.
I think she's great. But what I think is great about her is she is who she is, a Lutheran minister. And when you listen to her theology, it all springs from her Lutheran theology. She is a solid, right down the middle Lutheran minister who takes seriously grace and what this theology means.
Yep.
But she's also has a very particular style. She's got her own story. She, connects with certain people because of
presence.
And presence. Yeah. She's got the clothes she wears and their hair and the tattoos and all this stuff. And then you see a lot of what I then see are little Nadia parodies or knockoffs, people who really like her.
They gravitate.
So they become kind of like her. And I don't know if it was Ferris Bueller or not, but you had the Pat Benatar and one of those old movies. There was the Pat Benatars, and so you had all these girls who looked like Pat Benatar,
yes,
and was kind of being Pat Benatar, and you have all these little people being, little Nadias,
right?
And that's their image. They're
so
just kind of
tell
copying.
them that they're Lutheran.
Well, I hope that they would pick up along the way, whether they realize it or not, some of that good Lutheran solid theology that she puts out there. But it becomes a sort of, I think with media, the way our media is, it becomes parody real quick. And then we start just going into types and whatever. With our initial question is that, how do you respond?
Right.
I mean, you don't respond with the same spirit. You try to, if you respond at all, because sometimes there is no response.
Yeah, well, sometimes I think what I've learned is that if I don't respond, somebody else will respond on my behalf. And so, and then depending on their response, then I'm like, oh, wait.
That's not.
Hold on. That's not how I would have responded at all. So now I have to respond and dispel what you said.
Right.
And answer your question. Where I was just like, we could just let it go. No, okay, you spoke for me. Don't do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's where, again, I'm the underminer. I'm the, you're right.
Right.
But well, what do you have? Because where do you go after that?
But do you go anywhere? Yeah, but I don't want to say you're old.
I am old.
You have
every minute older.
Some age.
Experience.
Some experience. There it is. You have more experience. And more brain wavelength to see the gray in the middle ground than a high school student. So I think as an adult who can see the gray area, it's easy to be like, yeah, or yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But I think in high school, if I think about high school Meg, I don't know if I ever would have been like, yeah, you're right. I think it would have been more of a, I know you are, and what if I am rubber, you're glue. Or maybe even potentially going so far as to, well, Jesus says I'm supposed to turn the other cheek, and so.
That's all the stuff that we just read about in Luke 6. Those practical, how do you deal with those who abuse you? I mean, you just kind of...
What do you do about your enemies?
You don't engage on that level.
Right.
You engage as, as friends, as meaning well for the other person. I mean, that's where a lot of that...
Does your response change, do you think, if it's a friend or if it's just like a friend or a mutual acquaintance or some random person? Do you think your level of response changes?
Oh yeah, because I think with a friend, if they're really saying something or if they're just sort of spouting off.
If they're saying something just to say something, or if there is
a place to talk about something, you know, to have that you don't have to be a Christian that way, and there's a lot of people who aren't.
Right.
You know, that kind of conversation, you can say that to a friend, or you know, something along that way. That sounded so old manish. Telling kids, you need to say to this person, you know, there's other ways to be.
Here's how you should answer this.
Here's how you should answer this. And you know, it's very, even that's a very fake response.
Right.
And I think for a lot of it, I still am the non-engagement. If it's just somebody who's
right.
What do I care what you think?
What you think? What you think?
I'm sorry, and that may also just be my generational viewpoint of things.
More experience.
I think it's just
you.
Gen X. We're, yeah, whatever.
Us millennials here.
Yeah, you millennials have to engage in everything.
Yeah.
You can't let anything go.
No, that's because you guys let everything go. And like, so now we feel like, oh crap, I can't let this one go.
Man, whatever. Yeah. That's nice. You go pedal that somewhere else. You go pedal that elsewhere. I'm not interested in you.
I think my response now would be similar or the same as yours.
It's because you're getting old.
Being like, yeah, I know. I'm so close to being
old. You're getting more and more experience.
There it is. Yeah.
So your other thing you wanted to talk about today, which I think ties into all of this, is
it's a big one. It's a doozy.
Hit the big one. We can hit the big one.
Well, so it's now I'm just like, oh, cultic Christianity. So it's like, but the other end, but deconstruction.
Yeah.
And the way that's become such a hot button topic in the last few years. I almost want to say like during the COVID years, like this became a thing. Like I really think that as nasty as COVID is and was, I think it gave humanity a break. We couldn't leave our homes for X amount of time. We couldn't, like going to the grocery store could be dangerous. It's like all these things, our daily life got interrupted. And it took, I was living in Boone, and it took from March to Memorial Day weekend for everybody to be like, okay, maybe we can do something now. Maybe we can, outside, it's nice, so we'll just open all the doors and blah, blah, blah. But it was like, there was so much forced slowdown during that season that I think more people used their brains more than they had before. And like, you couldn't go to church because church wasn't open for a little bit. And so then it was thinking about, okay, well, what do I do on Sunday now? Because I know when I moved back to Boone 2 weeks before the pandemic started, and I hadn't been to church in a while because of being in the service industry and always having to work on the weekends. And it was like I moved back and I was so excited to go to church. And I went for 2 weeks and then COVID and everything shut down. And I was like, okay, this is fine. This is okay. What do we do on Sundays now? What do we do in this 2-hour window that this has been what we do? And so I think that happened to a lot of people. And I think it made a lot of people think, okay, so what now? And then people start talking. And you realize that other people are talking. And other people have the same ideas. And maybe the same questions and the same thoughts. And then you realize, oh, you've been thinking this way for a really long time. But maybe you never had the space or the outlet to ask the questions or to say the things Because that can be scary, because it's like, I want to say the thing, but if I say the thing, then what happens? Well, COVID happened, you're stuck, you're not seeing anybody, you can kind of say the thing, and there's not going to be like, no, we don't do that. Because then, oh, you said the thing, so that freed you up a little bit, and then gave everybody, or other people, the freedom to be like, oh man, I see what you're saying, I'm with you, here's my question. And so I don't know if, because people have been deconstructing for a long time. Yeah. I don't think coining it deconstruction, I think, is a newer thing. Mm-hmm. But it's been the unraveling of the performative rituals and figuring out what I believe and why I believe them.
So I think it's important to note that the deconstruction you're talking about is just like you said. Mm-hmm. It's more of the performative train or whatever was interrupted.
Right.
And for some, what happens then when it's not about I'm just kind of going through the motion.
Yeah.
And then there's the other deconstruction, which right now is people talking about.
Button topic.
But that has more to do with where the evangelical culture just finally got to a point where it started to implode.
Right. And crumble.
And it, it truly, there are elements of it became a parody of itself.
Right. Well, you look at it and you're just like, what?
Right.
Okay.
And so there's those who doubled down, and have issued well, if you're not one of us, then you never were one of us, and they're gonna put it into the enemy thing, and now we're gonna you can leave, but we're burning this bridge behind you.
But once
you'll never
leave,
be welcome back,
left.
And we're gonna do all that, and we're right, and you're stepping off the cliff into free fall.
Not even a good luck to you. It's just like, okay, bye.
Goodbye. You never really were. And so there's so I think there's a lot of that where that whole, again, it wasn't just evangelism as a theological concept and expression of Christianity. Mm-hmm. It became this whole culture, and you had to, do whatever the little tests and litmus, and you had to show you were bona fide, and
you had to pass the test.
You had to pass the test, and then and it became kind of, again, performative.
Right.
Just like it creates, again, we're very good, I think, at creating little subcultures as part of the way we live.
Yeah. I think that's a thing.
So I think there's a group of people who are like, I'm so tired of the politics. I'm so tired of this. I'm so tired of all that. I'm so tired that, I'm told that the gay agenda, and I have to be afraid, and these people are trying to get me, and they're the enemies, and it's constant fighting, and I have to kind of pretend to be always the injured party and the
Right.
That's exhausting. So I think there's those folks. It is exhausting. There's those folks. You're talking about something different, I think, than that kind of splashy, loud, media-covered deconstruction.
Right.
You're talking about a different type of... You're talking about wait a minute, now that I have time to think...
Well, yeah, let me think for myself.
What is this faith to me kind of thing?
Yeah. But it's... What is it? Two sides of the same coin kind of thing? Isn't that the statement?
I think yours is quieter. And I think it's also the natural progression of what's kind of been happening in churches like ours.
Right.
Where, again, it was part of the culture that everybody came to church.
Right,
everybody had a church, and you did certain things. You had to dress a certain way, and everything was done this, and it was just what you did.
You check the boxes.
Right. It's what you did.
Right.
And then that generation they just aged away.
Right.
And, the next generation who was raised in it's just what you did here recently, they kind of didn't, because they didn't have they didn't know why we did what we did
Right.
beyond this is just
This is
what
just
you
what we
do.
do.
And I think
This
that
is
hurt.
just what you've seen.
So mainline churches like ours, you know, at the time when we were riding high, we benefited number wise
Right.
and everything because it was a part of the culture. It was
Right.
surrounded and supported by the culture. But when that support disappeared, then it had to become you're
Well, it
here
has to
because you want to
evolve.
be here, or
Right.
you are. There's something about this
that you want to be a part of.
that you want to be a part
Yeah.
of that has value to your life.
Right. There's something that fits
Right.
into you as a person.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, very healthy. I mean, what's more important to us? Is it more important that we have people who are worshiping or coming together in this fellowship who are really seeking something,
Mhm.
or that I've got 400 people, and so my numbers of 400 people,
Right.
that's what it's all
Well, it's
about.
like we have numbers,
Yeah, is it
but
the
we don't have
numbers?
names.
Or I don't have people who, you know, again, they come and they know the prayers, that they say the prayers on Sunday morning or whatever, but it has it's not penetrating into their lives at all.
Right. Like it's, I think I've started to refer to it as like surface level Christianity.
Right.
It's like I do what I'm supposed to do on Sundays.
And I have a
and
very
maybe on
minimal
Wednesdays.
understanding of
Right.
certain things.
Yeah. Yeah, but come Monday, I'm a jerk again.
Right.
That's a
doesn't
big
penetrate.
right. It's just I was in the building. You saw me. We waved.
And that was part of what, when we were reading Luke 6, there's
Right.
that great little section of, you know, what's the point of loving others who love you? Everybody does that.
Right.
If that's all you're doing, then you don't get it yet. Or, you know, be
Right.
good to those who are good to you. Yeah,
Give and expect nothing.
everybody does that. So that's just kind of a you know, generic level of decency.
Yeah.
And Christianity is a little more than just general level of
Well, it's
decency.
more than that.
It's supposed to be a little bit more.
It's more than that. Well, that's why in like it becomes another one of those, this is such of a buzzword, but community.
Right.
Like this actively seeking out the community in which I can fully be who I am. I don't have to be like, oh, you can't see that part of me because, but it's like, no, it's like, hi, I'm here, I've shown up. I hope you are comfortable enough to also show up.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can build a real and authentic bond and community around that. But the church gives such a wonderful place for that hive mind, for the like-minded community to grow and to thrive.
But then also be careful that you don't become the parody of who
Right.
you are.
Right.
I mean,
You got to keep it real.
You get locked into things again.
right.
With Nadia
Bolz-Weber.
Yep. I'll get her name.
NBW.
You know, again, she does what you just described really well. I think one of the things
Creates the space for
she
that
creates
to
a
happen.
space for you know, lots of times for people who are wounded or they feel like they're outsiders because they've been told that they're outsiders, or but then they find connection with one another, and it's something that because she's can bring authenticity to that, you know, can help
or her
build
presence just allows for that
community
to be a thing.
to build. But then the danger is when that becomes the sort of it becomes false, and it becomes this sort of parody of what
you have to be able to
initially
check
was
that
really good
about your group. You have to be able to go, oh, hold on.
Right.
We're at the line of real, true authenticity, and then just the parody. It's
Right.
like stepping over the line.
Right.
And so it's like, no. I think you have to always be ready and willing to be like, wait, hold on. Couple steps back, everybody. Together.
And to me, sometimes that's where we don't allow natural change to happen.
Right.
As, again, speaking just in a church community context, when new folks come, but we don't allow anything to change, you have to conform
Right.
to whatever this church was when it was.
And it's like heyday.
Its heyday,
yeah.
or the thing, that image, that nostalgic image that
Right.
the people who've been there a long time believe that we are. And so rather than having something new come in and develop, we start to move towards conformity.
Right.
But we seem to do this naturally. I mean, it kind of goes across the board. And so I think that's always something, as a minister one day, you'll have to
But like that's like a real life
helping things
challenge.
change and be natural to who you are now, instead of trying to fit people into the
into the
spaces
box of
and the boxes
was.
of what was.
Right.
So we can, because how many times have I heard in churches, somebody has done something for a long time, and they're good people. They've I've led this group for a long time, or I've done this thing in the church for a long. Who's going to take my place? Well, maybe nobody takes your place. Maybe something different happens now.
Right.
But again, the thinking becomes, who's going to, it's almost interchangeable.
Right.
I'm going to step out, and then someone's going to come in and do it just like I've done it.
Continue the
because
path
if they don't, I'm going to turn around and destroy them.
Yeah.
And that's part of the, again, problems that we have, things that we do.
Right. No, like it's interesting to think about, like, I think that for the church moving forward, there's a lot of potential. And a lot of, I don't know, I think there's, a lot of potential for the authentic church and the authentic community.
But we don't get there if we
be a
can't
real
let
thing.
go
Right.
of things.
Yeah.
Or we can't, or again, we get caught in this one sort of bit. So no matter how we are, again, I think that's part of the, seeing it on a larger scale, I think that's part of what is happening in a lot of the evangelical churches. You have one generation who have been fighting these long cultural war and constantly create these cultural wars
to be in and stay in the box.
But you've got another group of people who are saying, I am so tired of fighting these culture wars.
Right. Well, I don't know why.
Why
that's
is
the
this?
point.
Why is this a part of our? But you've got a certain set of leadership who are in power, and they won't let go of the culture war, because that's what gives them
power.
Their power, in a sense. And these folks are like, I'm done with your wars.
Right.
I'm
done with you having the power.
But I want to still find God, and I don't think this is the way. And that's their part of so their deconstruction is almost a, sometimes deconstruction is a breaking of the grip of power of these folks who are just, because the culture war people have, to me, they've also become just a parody of themselves.
Well, they're just going to culture war until they're all die.
They're going to culture war themselves to death. And then now it's a culture war on this, and now it's the culture war on that. And you're like, shut up. I'm
going to
done.
come flip your table because...
We're done with you.
Yeah. Man, if there's... Our last question video, if there's like one thing that I'm like, hey, if you've made it this far... Thank you.
Oh no, COVID.
Don't say that. B, ask questions.
Oh yeah.
Keep
Always.
asking questions.
Never.
Don't stop asking questions.
When you stop, then you just That's
Right.
all. That's as
That's
far
it.
as you're
Then
going to
you've
go.
stopped. Right. To keep asking questions.
Good questions.
Right. Good questions.
Don't ask questions you already know the answer to. Those aren't real questions. Ask questions that challenge
Those
your
are
answers.
safe questions.
Those are safe questions.
Yeah.
Those are just trying to get you back to where you already are.
Right.
Ask the questions that don't support, ask the other question and then listen to
Yeah, and then listen to the answer.
To what people say.
Right. The answer.
Right, because it's not
so
necessarily definitive.
Right.
There's answers.
Yeah.
That should lead then to more questions.
Always questions.
So when the pandemic began,
Mm-hmm.
because you were saying, you were working and you had a break, and then you had in a very short period of time, I think, rediscovered what the church might be. Is that a accurate statement, or is that a?
Yeah, I think that it's Yeah, well, I also took time away from the church for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't actively seek out going to church when I was an undergrad, unless I was home for like Christmas, Easter. Then I would go.
But when you were home and you went, did that help you move, or did that just reinforce your break?
It really, I always got curious because the Methodist Church changes ministers often.
In theory.
But there was like the minister who was there in my childhood. I think that was a lot of like, okay, we go, we check the boxes, we do the things. I go because my mom came in my room and said, "Hi, we're leaving in 10 minutes. Let's go."
Mm-hmm.
And then as I got older and it was like, all right, if you're going, drive yourself. I'll meet you there. And then it was like, oh, let me actively make this choice. I'm probably still going to go because I don't want my mom to come home and be like, so what did you do today? Why didn't you go?
Was that an older minister at the time? Was it somebody who maybe had started in the 70s or in that era?
He was probably maybe in his 50s at the time. So like maybe in his 60s, 70s now. But that's really the person that I think about when I think about the bad theology coming from that church. And that. And then...
And what was bad about that theology? What was it that you would apply that word to? I mean, what were the elements? I mean, you don't have to be
it's like
personal and, whatever.
No, it's like grace wasn't taught. Like that wasn't a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's supposed to be a pillar in like Christianity as a whole. Like grace is such a big deal. And that wasn't there. And that wasn't, like it was never present and never felt like it was taught. And so then it was just like, oh, well, I'm a bad person. And I can't change that.
Okay.
I think is how I felt a lot as a kid in church. And then we got another minister who I was like, yes, you are fantastic. Thank you.
So what was fantastic about that person? What did they bring that you then responded to?
Well, it was very more like, it felt more like real and authentic, and you could tell, or I could tell, that this person had wrestled with a lot of the same stuff I still keep in touch with this person. We still talk all the time.
There you go.
And so it's like this person had wrestled with the things and not necessarily had all the answers.
Right.
But kind of encouraged the question asking. And then the next one encouraged the question asking. And so, and I, like, whoever's there now, I don't know, because I haven't been in X amount of years. But it's like, there's like two people that really stand out as, and I was older when they both came, as being like, oh, yes, okay. But then didn't, because one of them was like late high school, and then the other one was in college, and so I only saw that person kind of a few times.
But it was still enough to make an impression on
Yeah, and still enough to like make the difference of like, oh, there are questions to be asked, and there are things to look for.
So then you took a break, and when you decided, you made the decision, I'm going to try again. I mean, before COVID or whatever got in the way. What was it you were looking for? What?
So I
with
started
the churches that you went to. What was it that you were thinking? Well, this is what I. Did you go with? This is what I want to find, or these folks might be able to.
Well, I was trying to make friends. It was trying to find like-minded people. And so when I started going to church in Boone again, like as a young adult, it was through, I'd been doing CrossFit and going to a CrossFit gym every single day. And the group of people in the class that I worked out with every day went to this church.
Okay.
And so it was like one Sunday, it was like, or like a Friday, I guess we were working out. And then Sunday, it was just like, so this is the church we go to, if that's your thing, if you want to go. And I was like, well, yeah, you guys are all going. I think I want to go. And so I enjoyed the community that I had between the gym and the heart. And like going, I enjoyed going. It never felt performative to go. And I think that's really when like the cracking and the deep dive into thinking about it really became, like, I see this modeled by this pastor on this stage every Sunday, but then I see him out in the community doing the exact same thing that he's doing up there out in the world. And that was like, yes, okay, that's the point. That's what we do. And not because it's performative, but because it's real. And then I moved again to have a job. And then it became, no, you can't ever have Sundays off because it's the service industry. Right. So you work, it's like Wednesday to Sunday. That's it. You can have Monday and Tuesday off. But it's like, you can't go to church on Monday and Tuesday because guess who doesn't have church on Monday and Tuesday? Church doesn't have church on Monday and Tuesday.
Maybe we need to have church on
Service Industry Day is Monday.
Is Service Industry Day
Service
Monday?
Industry Day is Monday because everything else is closed. So it's like that option was no longer there. And then moving back to Boone after about a year, I was like, yes, I'm going back to the heart. This is going to be so great. COVID. And it was like, okay, why do we go to church, Meg? What's the point? What are we looking for? You got to figure that one out. And then COVID, and then I moved, and then now here we are.
Now here you are. But friendship. I mean, we stress a lot of fellowship and
Right.
friendship and having somebody,
Right.
being a part of a community where you
Right.
can maybe begin to feel safe to ask
Right.
harder questions or so you're not going it alone. That's not
Right.
a bad thing.
Right.
That's if that's what got you in the door to begin with,
Right.
it's fine with that.
Right.
But if you don't move beyond that,
Mm-hmm.
if it's just again being a part of this place,
Well, I'm in this
or
group, and I'm
in the group, or there has to be some sort of next step,
Right.
and I think that's the harder piece.
Right.
Um,
Well, and then it's like,
how
well, what do
begin
you
to really
do
explore
when you have to create the next step?
yourself? Even.
Right. Because, like, sometimes it's like, oh, yeah, the community, the people get you in the door, and then you're there. And then maybe you see a need to do something one step further that maybe nobody else sees or nobody else has done yet.
Mm-hmm.
But so then if you take that step, first I guess you have to figure out what the step is. And then you have to take the step.
Right.
And it's okay if taking the step means that, maybe I'm leaving my group behind a little bit to try and keep going.
Yeah, that's also scary too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's complicated. I mean,
It is
right?
complicated. Yeah.
It's never just a simple. This is the simple, easy answer. It's,
Right.
You're dealing with
There's just a lot of layers.
emotions
always,
and
for everything.
relationships, and you want to maybe do more, but you're afraid.
Right.
You get into those patterns of, but I'm afraid.
No, I'm doing enough right now. It's fine.
Or what if my group doesn't like me going in this direction? Am I in a type of community where I am allowed to grow outside of
Right.
what we all do, and this is what we all believe, right?
Yeah. It's the looking around, right? You believe this too?
Or else,
Right.
if you don't believe this, then you're not really one of us.
Right.
And so sometimes,
Man, and then you're back in the cult.
right? Then you, yeah.
You've just created it then.
Right. So if you're looking at something and it's like, why do I have to? I can tell that my group really doesn't like green people, and if my group doesn't like green people, but I don't really like that, but I like my group.
Right.
I
just
use green. I just use green people because there's always some kind of label. Right. One of the negatives of contemporary Christianity is that we seem to always want to find somebody to point out. To create an enemy, right. Or what we're against. The other.
Right.
Which is contrary to the gospel. But anyway.
Right, hardcore.
We still want to create, we seem to want to create the other.
Right.
And at what point do you break from that
right
comfort that you found, or
well, it's
I guess this is what I'm supposed to do, or
no, because I think anytime that the group that you're a part of starts targeting another,
right,
it's time to leave that group,
right,
because that's not Christianity, and targeting the group, targeting the other,
right.
That's when you have to go, oh man.
But I think a lot of people, because they maybe don't put as much thought into it. They go because they like the experience. They meet people who are nice to them, and
I like my small group. I like
right, yeah. And the message I've heard is motivational, and that I'm caught up in the emotion and the whatever, all those other little things at work. But then when I find that, but we don't want women. You can't be a minister.
Right.
Only men can be ministers.
Right.
Is that enough for me to go, well, I'm not comfortable with that, but
it should be.
But I like all this other stuff, and I don't want to give it up because of that. Or, then we find out, yeah, we're really against these others, whatever that case
Right.
may be, or somebody starts to go, theology and politics. Hey, did you know there's no separation between
Right.
our theological viewpoints and what we are now telling you your political viewpoints are?
Right. Yeah, but I think if you keep sticking it out through that, then as you're like your social credit, like your like who you are as a person, like will other people start to see the group that you associate with? And guess what?
And it's you.
You're in that group. Therefore,
you are those people.
Right. But that's what happens.
Yeah. And I mean, do you think that's a lot of what, again, this natural point of deconstruction that's happening?
Yeah. Take out the log in your own eye so you can help your brother see those.
That sounds like it comes
more
from Luke
clearly
6.
in his